Welcome to Fairy Tale Access, where the head fairy's quest is to prove that fairy tales do exist in actual time rather than once upon a time. Together, we will unravel the heroes, young and old, who turn dreams into reality. These are the people who still believe in happily ever after. The discoveries will bend even our most cynical non-believers into believing in fairy tales. Hi, welcome to Fairy Tale Access. Today, I'm excited to introduce you to Craig Price, the author of Dragonia. From Mobile, Alabama by Skype. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me on here.
Oh, my pleasure, Craig. So really exceptional storytelling, well planned out. Tell me how you came to write about a corrupt government, the obstacles they overcome, and why you went with the dragons versus wyverns. How do you say that word? Is it wyverns?
I've heard it pronounced wyverns and wyverns, and I've heard several different pronunciations for it. So, whatever people like to, however people like to say it.
Right. So dragons have four legs, and the wyverns have two. But they're both still a dragon type of species. Just tell me about all that. How did all that come about?
I've always been interested in dragons all my life. Seeing pictures of them, seeing them in movies. Dragonheart was one of my favorite movies. It's a great movie. But I saw a lot of movies and TV shows where they called these creatures dragons, but they only had two legs. And doing a little bit of research into that, I realized that those are actually wyverns. So if you look at like Game of Thrones, you see what they call dragons on the show, but they only have two legs. So it's actually a wyvern. So there's a big size difference in the appendages for their legs. And I just really wanted to bring a story to light to kind of point out the differences between the two. And then I kind of ask the question, who would win in a war, an army of dragon riders or an army of wyvern riders? I kind of compare it in my head to like an army of horse riders against an army of elephant riders. The elephants or the dragons are going to be a lot bigger and stronger, but they're not going to have the maneuverability capabilities of these smaller horses or wyverns.
So it's pretty well done where I think like a 7th or 8th grader could read it too.
Yes, I did this. My first series that I wrote was a little bit more adult, I'd say a teenager and up. And I really wanted my son to be able to read these books. And when I was writing them, he was 10 years old. He's 12 now. But I wanted to be able to write it so that way I could hand it to him and say, here, you can read Daddy's book. And so he's read them and he's liked them. So that was the main goal with that, was to have it written where a younger person could read it.
Excellent. So there's looking at what you do online with the other books you have coming out. It seems that some of them really empower women, but I wanted to ask you why the women in this novel didn't have that empowerment. For instance, the sister who was kidnapped and held by a king, she is in love with the guy who saved her, who's actually kind of evil and turns in the resistance. But all throughout the book, she was a strong force. She stood up for what she believed in. That really came through strong. But then there's just this little nuance that you're reading the book and you're like, there's just something missing. Why does she keep going for this bad guy? Because she kept turning back to him. Then the other character, for the main character, his love interest, he wouldn't let her go on any of the adventures or wars that they were having with the government. But he wanted her to stay home, stay with all the wyvern eggs, and just stay in the background so she was safe. And she ends up getting her own way in the end, kind of. But it takes a while. So it really didn't come together why these women weren't as strong as other women and reviews that people give you in other books. So I'm wondering what was going on with you at the time, because in the back of the book, it kind of clicked all together that you pointed out that you had gotten remarried, you have 2 sons, but you had to point out that you had full custody of one of your sons. So did that play into the way these women developed and what's changed going forward in your other books?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had some of the best relationship in the past, but I've come through that. With this story, I really wanted to, since it's a medieval setting, where typically in the medieval European style of setting, men do all the work, they do all the wars, and the women stay home. And I wanted to have that same kind of feel, but then I wanted the women to be able to come in and show that they can, do just the same thing. So I have my main character that, like his Devarius, his love interest, Aquila. He's like, I don't want to lose you. Please don't come. And then she finds her own way into the battle. So I wanted to kind of put that out there of him trying to protect, have that kind of overbearing protectiveness from more of our ancient culture where men did the fighting and the women stayed home. But I wanted to actually break that barrier. I wanted to show more so the barrier being broken than it already being broken and women just fighting side by side with men. I wanted to actually show the barrier being broken and then the women starting to get more involved. Book 2 of my series follows two main characters, the sister, Zaviana, and then another woman as they go through and become strong, independent women and do stuff themselves. And there's a little bit more backstory to the sister, Zaviana, and the mercenary that she ends up falling for. He had originally saved her years before that, and I have a short story that's available to it was available in a anthology, and that anthology is no longer up except for in paperback, but it's also available to my subscribers. Mm-hmm. It's about 10,000 words. It's called Dragonia Traitor, and it's about that mercenary and how he ends up saving her. And that was the backstory between those two characters. That's why there's a spark there, even though he's kind of a bad guy. But he ends up going from a mercenary that rats out the resistance to joining the resistance and trying to help them out because he realizes how corrupt that empire is.
Right, but the other you could tell he saved her twice in this book. But the second time he saves her, he's holding her hostage. She's chained. She can't leave. That's almost like Stockholm syndrome. Yeah. And you wish she would get over it, by the end. But he did come to the rescue, so it's kind of torn in between. So I look forward to seeing how that plays out.
Yeah, she's very torn how she feels about him because he did keep her chained just because she was trying to run off the resistance. He was worried that she was going to get herself killed. But also she's like, that's not right. And so she has very conflicting emotions about him because she knows he cares, but what he does is not okay either. So
that makes sense. So why dragons and wyverns?
I've always loved dragons. As I said, one of my favorite movies is Dragonheart with Sean Connery as the dragon and Dennis Quaid. I've always just had a fascination with them. Love looking at dragon art, dragon movies. I've always just loved and then one thing I saw missing in a lot of the dragons is almost everywhere you see a dragon, it's breathing fire. And I wanted to bring more elements into it, which is what I do with my Dragonia books. I got fire dragons, ice dragons, lightning. I kind of brought a bunch of other elements into it. I'm going to try to put a little bit of science behind, how they breathe fire and how they breathe ice. And I found that a lot of fun. But I've always just had a fascination with that, when I was young, first, second grade, dinosaurs. And then that kind of just turned into dragons later on, I guess.
And what about the bond between brother and sister? Do you have a sister or brothers that you experience that same type of bond with? Because that was really well done.
Thank you. I have 2 older brothers from my mom's side, and I was close with them both, more with one than the other when I was growing up. But I also have a sister on my dad's side, and we were separated when I was really young, like a baby, and I kind of reunited with her when I was 13. I got to see her again. That was really exciting for me because she was in college at that time, and I was just a little tiny teenager, and then later on got reunited with her again, and I keep in contact with her, and she lives on the East Coast, and last year I actually got up to go and see her, and I've always kind of wanted more of a relationship with her, but I just never had a chance to really get to know her too well because of distances and stuff. But I kind of had that in mind when I was writing that bondship of brother and sister being separated and then being reunited. So that's kind of been my inspiration for that.
That makes sense. It was really well done. You could see just how that love between the two grew with that separation. And then, what's your background? Is this your full-time job? Do you work? Where did you learn to write?
I have been wanting to write since the first grade. So I had a teacher who took construction paper and then the paper that has the blank top and then like the 3 big lines on the bottom when you were first learning how to write in first grade. She took all that and she folded it up and stapled it. And she handed it to every kid and said, here, write a book, draw a cover, draw a picture on the top, write 3 sentences, and just write a book. I did that one time and I started making my own books and writing my own stories after that. As far as a career, I started out as a teenager at McDonald's, went to a department store. I ended up getting, when I moved down here with my son, I ended up getting a job at a shipyard as a pipe fitter. So I helped install a lot of pipe on different ships, Navy ships and everything. And now currently I went from labor work to a pipe planner. So I actually try to help plan pipe for the pipe fitters. So that's my current day job. I have like 14, 15 novels published now. I'm on my way toward becoming a full-time author, but it's still a ways off. So I do enjoy my day job. I enjoy writing a lot, though.
It sounds like it. 14. How long did this one take to write?
That one. So there's 3 books involved in that box, in that kind of omnibus. And the first book I wrote in like a month and a half, I want to say, but then I spent some time editing it. So it probably took me a couple of months. And then over the next year, I wrote the second 2 books. So that little 3-book series altogether was probably about 8 months worth of work on that. And then I was going to come out with books 4 and 5 last year, but I got approached by a small publisher to do some co-writing. So I actually co-wrote a trilogy with another author, and now I'm kind of caught up on the stuff I was doing. But I'm going back to trying to finish book 4 and 5 because I don't want to leave a series hanging. I want to conclude it, and I love the Dragonia world so much that I'm actually looking into starting to think about ways to bring another series into the same world.
Oh, that sounds great. It's exceptionally well done. So writing wise, where did you learn, like, did you take it in school, like English, literacy, something? Because you have an exceptional way of writing the story and delivering, and keeping us really tuned in. Like, I think it only took me a couple days to read, and it's like 500 and something pages.
I didn't do any formal studying on writing. I've read a lot of books. I've read many craft books as well of plot and structure and everything. I did take creative writing class in high school, but I ended up not passing that class because my mom had some health issues, and so like my attention was just all over the place. But since then, since becoming an adult and really always wanting to write and always writing, I never stopped writing. I just kept on writing. To say you got to write 1 million words to start getting good at it. Well, I was probably hitting that number when I was becoming an adult because I never stopped writing short stories all over the place. I wish I could find a lot of those. But a lot of one thing that really helped me out was I was on a website called Wattpad where you write one chapter at a time, and people can read on their tablet or phone. Kind of amateur writers, a lot of teenage authors on there, just people just writing for fun. And I had a lot of people critiquing me on there and telling me ways to make my stuff better. And I took all those comments in, and I just fueled it into my writing to make it better.
Well, you have a huge readership on Wattpad.
Yes. And that was from years ago. I haven't really been on there too much lately. I'm actually starting to get back into it now. But all my followers from there were back from 2011, 2012. So if I would have just stuck with it while I was publishing other stuff, it probably would be bigger now. But Wattpad was a really great place. Another great place was a podcast called Writing Excuses, which Brandon Sanderson and several other real well-known authors, they do a 15-minute podcast every week for like the past 10 years with just really condensed writing tips on every aspect of writing. And I listened to those and just absorbed it.
Well, you definitely learned it exceptionally well.
Thank you.
It's so well written. Beautiful job with the writing. What about the science that you developed behind the dragons with just the different things that make them do what they do? Some do fire, some do wind, but all that alchemy type of thing.
Yeah, I really enjoyed adding a little bit of science into it. I mean, I'm a fantasy author. A lot of stuff you don't really have to go through and explain too well, but it's always fun to add that extra detail in there. And I wanted to actually come up with the reasons behind why they make fire, why they make ice. And so with the dragons I have, where there's oil in their uvula in their mouth, and it drops down, and when their breath is just so hot, it ignites that oil on contact, and that's how the fire comes out. That's a similar concept with the ice dragons. Their breath is so cold, mixes with a certain kind of oil, it turns into ice breath that comes out and can freeze things. Then you got the acid dragons, where it's a similar concept. The wind dragons were the only one that were a little bit different because you can't really, there's no element or oil I can think of to mix with wind. So I just happen to have just really strong lungs that they can really just blow things around really well. And then lightning has the same thing, where something drips down and some kind of electrical charge in their breath that kind of just, when it hits that oil, big old static happens, and you got lightning. So I had a lot of fun coming up with all of those concepts, and I wanted to play around a little bit more than that. That's why I have the world set on a planet that has two suns, and it does a partial figure eight orbit around them. And then I try to come up with the seasons that would match that. And then having two moons, and also put in the southern hemisphere, because most fantasy you read is all in the northern hemisphere. So I want to do a couple of different things to kind of mix it up and keep me on my toes when I was writing. And doing that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's all the way through with the characters, with the science, with the interaction between humans and animals. You had it seemed like you had some key rules for yourself where everything was consistent and flowed. I didn't have to go back and go, oh, didn't he say this? The only flaw was, and I think what threw it off for the women involved, including another young woman that they sent on to find like a dragon type of dog that had the same abilities as the wyverns, where she had to come back, and it was, that she was just hinged on getting approval. So, but I think what might have thrown us off when we were reading it, instead of expecting it from the medieval point of view, was the fact that with the newsletter and empowering women, I think that with the next book that I can't pronounce, is it Ikchani?
Yeah, Heart of Ikchani.
Yeah, and and then other books that you've written have really good reviews for powerful women. So that might have gave us some misconception that these women were going to be empowered and more in charge. But the way you explained it, it makes sense. So I can't wait to see what happens in book 2, because now you can see that growth throughout. And then the killer ending. That was really evil. You left us with such a huge cliffhanger. Is the next book ready?
The next book is, I have it mostly outlined. I'm hoping to get it written and published early next year is my goal. So the first three books in that omnibus are Rise of the Wyverns, Revenge of the Dragons, and then Dragonstone. So the next one is called Rise of Magic. And it's actually going to follow the woman who went and found the drakes, the dog-like dragons, Liliana, as she tries to overcome the fact that she can't use magic and actually wants to learn how to use magic, even though she's not innate with the ability. And so it's going to be a story that kind of follows her as she overcomes those obstacles and figures out how to be. Because every time she thinks she does something good for the resistance, someone just kind of comes and overshadows her. Like when she brings back all the wyvern scales, that's when the people return with the Dragonstone, and she's like, just, oh man, like, so I really want this next book to have her just show everybody up. So that's gonna be the fun one.
Oh, I can't wait to see it. What about the bond between humans and animals throughout? Because the dragons and the wyverns are more like animals. They're really intelligent animals. But how did you come up with structuring that and the dynamics? Because the dynamics are really good. They're so believable.
Yeah, I love the bond. There's a lot of good books and movies out there with a bond between a human and an animal, especially one that they develop as intelligent. There's some good ones out there for dragons, like the Aragon series that Christopher Paglioni wrote. Dragon Riders of Pern with Anne McCaffrey. Some really great books out there that kind of made me think, yeah, I want intelligent dragons. But I started out in the book to where they don't seem like they're intelligent dragons. They seem like they're just animals. And then the dragons are more so just animals than the wyverns, because they develop communication with the wyverns a lot sooner, but then they find out later that there's a reason for that. There's a reason the dragons have lost their intelligence through that Dragonstone. So I really wanted to create a bond, almost like a dog and human bond. Where you go everywhere you go, your dog wants to be right in your lap and just buddy with you. I really wanted that kind of bond, but on a more intellectual level where they can actually communicate with each other. So that was a lot of fun to develop.
Was there any place that you traveled to that really played more into the creation of the islands and the worlds that you created in this series?
I've been blessed to be able to travel a lot of places, not internationally, but here in the United States. When my dad moved down here to Mississippi, Alabama, like 25 years ago, I went on the road trip with him, and we stopped at the Grand Canyon and a bunch of other really neat places all the way through. I've also been to White Sands, was a lot of fun in New Mexico. Went there with my mom and stuff. My grandma lived in Arizona for many years, so I went there and visited Arizona a lot. I have a lot of family in Salt Lake City, Utah, so I go there a lot. It's very pretty with all the meadows. I took my honeymoon in like Colorado Springs, Colorado. So all these different places I've been to, I've seen, from the vast deserts to the up in the mountains to the lakes, and I just took it all and just really wanted to. When I laid out my map for the world, I really wanted to have different areas that have different looks. So a lot of that went into my writing. Then I grew up and lived most of my life in Washington State, the Evergreen State. And I love nature, all the trees. I love nature. And it's a little too hot down here in Alabama with the humidity in the summer for me to get out too much. So during that, I just really write about it. Summertime. It's starting to cool off now, so I'll be back outside walking trails again.
Wow. Well, you can see how those places would play out in the story, but it was really well done. You were consistent with each place and what was there, the animals, how things interacted, and you're just key at keeping us so in tune with excitement and I have to find out what happens next without rushing us through. It's a really good pace, exceptionally well written.
I've learned a lot about pacing when I was writing on Wattpad, because when I would write one chapter, before to get the second chapter done, I'd have people start commenting on my chapter. And so I'd always learn how to end it just right with kind of a partial cliffhanger, not leaving the reader completely hanging, but leave them hanging just enough to where they want to, they're kind of just leaving more comments on my chapter for the next for me to write the next chapter, because it would make me feel good, make me write faster, and keep me my momentum going by having those kind of comments. So I kind of learned to write that way.
Yeah, you definitely nailed it. So what advice would you give authors or young people that are thinking of writing?
Keep at it. Don't give up. My first book took me seven or more years. My first book was The Crimson Claymore, and it took me a long time. Second book took me a couple years as well. And you got to keep writing. Just keep writing, get the words out. It gets easier. It really does. And then just find other authors. The writing community is really great out there. All of us know in the writing community know that we cannot write enough books for a reader. Readers can read through a book much faster than we can write through them, even fast writers. There's just no way we can keep up. So we are fine bringing other authors in and say, hey, I'll show you a few things. Let's all work on this together. There's no way I can write enough books for all these readers. Come join. Here's some tricks and tips, and just reach out to the community. And it's just a great community out there.
How does it work? Because when you made the US Today's best-selling list, you did it with a bunch of other authors that you got together in the Fantasy Engineer, and you did a box set. How did you guys coordinate that?
There was a lot of coordination and promotion involved in that. We each gave someone different tasks. So someone was running Facebook ads, someone was running BookBub ads, someone else was running Amazon ads, and we're really just trying to try and push to get as many sales. And it was a really great community effort because we all worked together to try and accomplish that goal, which is a huge goal. You have to hit over 6,000 sales in a single week to hit that list. And so it really taught me what it takes to get there. And then I take all that knowledge and I'm going to work on implementing that into a future book, solo book of mine, now that I know what all goes into it.
Yeah. Well, definitely. Thank you so much for sharing so much about what you do, and that as an author, it's important to be part of the community team because teamwork wins. And it's such a good book. Thank you again for sharing it with us.
Well, thank you for having me on. It's been great.
My pleasure. Until next time, keep asking questions. And if you love stories with a medieval twist to it, and you love dragons and now wyverns, this is definitely the book, Dragonia. You're going to love the series. We'll see you soon.